Hello and welcome to this new episode of the Climate Conversations. And today we have two special guests. We have Andrea, an architect, and also the curator of the Curitiba Hub of the Global Shapers community. And we also have Carolina, who is a lawyer by profession and also climate justice advocate. Thank you guys for joining this conversation.
Thank you for inviting us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yep, going ahead with our conversation, what are the most significant climate-related challenges faced by Curitiba, and how does the local community respond to these challenges? Then we can start with you, Carolina.
So, in the recent decades, the rainfall in Curitiba has been increasingly irregular. So, we are having lots of problems with floods, but also we are facing severe periods of drought in the last 30 years. This is affecting the price of food. Every year, the Brazilian food is getting expensive, and we also have the problem because the scarce water resources are competing in the production of our national base foods like rice and beans. So we are every day more dependent from wheat from Argentina, and we are producing less rice and beans from our local communities. In our city specifically, we are having a lot of problems with the poorest parts of the city are facing floods. So we also face diseases related to water contamination by sewage. Until the 90s, it was common for the municipality to create parks in the areas that were flooded. But since the 90s, neoliberalism has become increasingly stronger in our city's public administration, which stopped the public investments in the city. So nowadays, the communities are having to adapt in isolations. Floods often happen, and the only measures to be taken is to look for donations to minimize the material damage suffered.
That's very interesting. And we had also, previously mentioned that how the marginalized or low-income communities actually depend on, collecting recycled goods, like, the scrap, the project that the local government has, and how when it floods, all the stock that they have gets damaged. And again, further it becomes a point of helplessness for them. Do you have
Exactly.
anything to add on to this, Andrea?
No, I think that Carolina said beautifully, and I think that she explained it quite well.
Awesome, awesome. The next question is for you, an architect. So, how are the architectural and urban planning decisions in Curitiba made in consultation with local communities?
Well, the city was planned from its beginning, so it's a very structured idea of growing city and growing in number. So the start of the city was planned without public consultation, but the growth of it is being more and more consulted with its people. We have a few spaces in the town that were really importantly created by people from the community. We had a little space in the city called Praça do Bolso do Ciclista it was empty space in the middle of the town, in the center of the town, that was started to be used by local people, and the city started to realize that that place was heavily used, and it tried to just control it. It didn't work, so the people just took control of it and build what they wanted, the way that they wanted to use, and the city saw that going against the people doesn't really work anymore. So they now work with people. So every time that there is a change in a neighborhood, there is a meeting with the city hall and with the leadership in that area. We have meetings being done. We have understandings of how the people want to use the surroundings, and it's working pretty well. We have a great project of urban plantation that actually started with someone trying to use the surroundings of their house that were unused to grow edible foods. The city tried to go against it. It didn't really work. And now it became a law. And now you can have plantations around your house, around your neighborhood. And the city can actually help you do that. So if you have 10 people to help you, you can have the city giving you a space of your neighborhood for you to grow plantations of any kind. So it's been really interesting
That's
to see
Yep,
the city
that's
grow.
actually very interesting.
Yeah, the city grow with people's perception of it, and having the city hall also realizing that it cannot always do something and it can't always control it.
I just had one important question over there. We spoke about how floods are very frequent in Curitiba, the river overflowing. So is there any sort of architectural intervention when it comes to, climate resilient buildings? When new buildings are constructed, is there any conversations around, how can we make it more resilient to floods or any natural disasters of that sort?
Unfortunately, we don't have that now. As Carolina said, in the beginning of the 90s, we have the plans of building parks so that the parks could flood and not the city, not the house around it. But that hasn't been continued. And for a long time, the city has been forgetting the small neighborhoods and the very sited neighborhoods. And they are flooding more and more and being used more by people in a way that it's not planned and not controlled well enough for them to be able to continue using that space healthily and good for
Okay.
them.
Totally, totally. I think India and Brazil are similar in a lot of ways. The climate challenges that we face, the population, the way the population behaves. So, on to my next question, how does climate justice play a role in addressing the disproportionate impact of climate change, especially on the marginalized communities in Curitiba? So, can you also share examples of initiatives in Curitiba that aim to bridge the social and economic disparities in the context of climate adaptation and resilience? I think, Carolina, we can start with you.
Right. So, as previously mentioned, the price of food and the precariousness of housing is affecting the poor communities, and these communities have no responsibility in the changes that are affecting the city, our land use around the city, or even the emission of greenhouse gases. Quite the contrary, they normally have green jobs, such as agents of recycling and such. We have a movement here in Curitiba that was a part of the Global Shaper community that is named Curitiba Climate Network, or Rede Curitiba Climática in Portuguese, that we just call it HEC. And HEC is a collective movement that has the purpose of engaging and articulating people to make Curitiba a region more fair and more sustainable. Our main objective is to build bridges between the citizens and public power, and our instruments to do that are based on the Climate Action Plan of Curitiba that was made by the municipality, and also scientific studies and journalistic articles and reports that we use to promote climate training and advocacy workshops for these groups that are directly affected by the climate crisis in Curitiba. So we go to the places where people work with recycling, or to the places that are having floods every year, and we try to communicate with these groups and to take their claims to the public, to the public power. And also, and we try to bring the information and some resources from the public administration that sometimes those people don't have access, because of illiteracy, and sometimes they don't have access to a proper education, so for them is too difficult to reach for these resources, and we try to be this bridge.
That's actually a very, very interesting project. You are essentially having a civil action, collective voice of the youth, and ensuring that it is being heard, especially by the governance, by the people in governance. Can you
Yeah.
shed light on the same, Andrea?
Yeah, I can actually talk a bit more how heck get to be
Yeah, just for the
seen.
viewers, I think it is REC, right? But it's
Yeah.
heck in
Yeah.
Portuguese.
And
RECC.
Oh,
yeah,
okay, okay.
and heck is being given more and more space in like big scene conversations. So it's been invited to the youth conversation that had in the town, and someone talked to uh, powerful people and people that can actually do the difference. So they are doing such a great job at getting in the communities and doing that with the communities. But it's also interesting how the government now opens a space, the government and big companies open a space for them to talk about and direction, to give a direction to other people do the same. And I think it's very interesting, especially um, being from a generation that lives on our phone. Heck is very open and very active on Instagram and gives us a lot of information. So we had a week of extreme heat in Brazil, and especially in our town, which is not used to that amount of heat. And Heck was very eager to share the the spaces that were fighting with the bigger problems in the city. And so, as global shapers, that were kind of like the first betting of Heck, we are so excited to see those informations being shared, because then we can continue to do something with Heck, and also with other people, and having um, other ideas, because obviously Heck is an amazing project, but it can't do everything. It's really, really hard to do everything, but it's giving the information to other people with resources to do the same thing, which I think is amazing.
Totally, totally. And I think it's very interesting, how a very small idea that started off within Global Shapers has actually spawned off into a much bigger action, which finally has had a lot of tangible results. Even cases where the city council or the related authorities had to give the documents to the public, as to what are the funds being allocated for, what are they actually doing. I think the voices that were unheard before of, or the voices that did not have much power were sort of amplified by this total movement that was brought about by Hick. That's totally amazing what you guys have done. Going back to the climate advocacy as well as climate justice part. So essentially, we also have another aspect wherein you are mapping it, right? So you are going to the final end point. That is the people who are the victims of the issues, the floods, the climate change per se, and you're actually collecting all these data from them and then also helping them out to get the claims or related benefits from the local government, which is also an important factor when we look at the broad spectrum of things. So you are having awareness using ag, you are also having direct action in terms of finding out who are the victims of this and helping them getting the required legal assistance. And also, you guys, as we had spoken earlier, there is also another aspect to it where you are mapping out what are the vulnerable areas, which are the vulnerable areas, and figuring out a map as to what is to be done in that particular area. I think that is also an amazing insight into the whole project and how something that was started in a very short span of time has spawned off into such a big project. It's pretty amazing what you guys are doing.
Thank you very much.
Coming to the end of the climate conversations, I just end most of these conversations with a question that I pose to the guests. In your opinion, what's the one pertinent way in which an ordinary person can contribute to climate action and promote sustainability? Carolina?
All right. In my opinion, the only effective way to initiate climate action and promote sustainability is to start or join an organized group to to act locally. Structural problems are not tackled individually, but collectively. And I have a phrase that I love so much that is ecology without class consciousness is gardening. That was pronounced by our Gandhi from Brazil, who is Chico Mendes, who was the first famous environmental activist from Brazil. So I live by that motto.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that's very true as well. Unless you get it structured and you have a space for the collective voice to be heard, it doesn't have the same power. What about you, Andrea?
Well, joining in with Carolina's response, I think that also joining with a structure group can give you new views about your own space of living, so you understand how you can live more sustainably, or understand how the rains are damaging or making it difficult to live around you, or the heat and everything, and you can start thinking more about the people that live around you. Those problems sometimes can make people very individualized, because they think that it's not something that everyone goes through. But being in a group with people that understand those terms and understand those issues can make you see the world in a different way, and maybe find a new solution for yourself and for your neighbors.
That's actually equally amazing. And I think that's very important, the point that you just put. Even if you see, heck, what you guys are doing, especially, figuring out the vulnerable areas, I think that's also very important. As an individual, you're actually finding out what are the problems that are there. And then, collectively, you're helping out a community as well, figuring out what would be the best response for such a threat or such an issue that climate is having. Thank you so much for spending your time with us, and all the very best to you, Andrea and Carolina, and the Global Shapers Hub of Curitiba, as well as HEC. All the
Thank you so
best to
much.
your future endeavors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to be here and to have this conversation with you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Good luck with the rest of the podcast. It's amazing.
Thank you.
We are
Thank you
eager
so
to hear
much.
it.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.